2022 was definitely a year for video games. Kirby has finally got his jump to 3D, Klonoa and Pac-Man returns for the first time on Switch. Nintendo has a weird obsession with threes with Splatoon 3 and Xenoblade 3 and such, but among all of them, the easiest highlight for this year was Sonic Frontiers. The hype for this game was pretty insane, like it was a literal emotional roller coaster. So when it comes to Sonic games during the 2010s, it was very scarce when it comes to Sonic Team games. Sonic Lost World released in 2013, and then we had a 4-year gap between that and Sonic Forces, and we all know how that ended up. So, looking forward to the future of Sonic, we had no idea where it was going, because they were clearly drained on these regular formula that they've been doing since Unleashed. So, what would be next for Sonic was up in the air, so we had to wait. And boy, we did have to wait. Now, between Sonic Forces and Sonic Frontiers, there has been a lot of stuff for Sonic, and I mean a lot. Around that time, the IDW comics started to kick off with very good comic books throughout. Sonic also had 2 massive live-action movies that were a massive success. And ending things off this year, we had Sonic Prime and such. But when it comes to the games, well, this is when things get pretty iffy. The only new game we had between Forces and Frontiers besides re-releases and such was Team Sonic Racing. There was also the 2020 Mario and Sonic Olympic games that also released between then. So yeah, it was an interesting ride to go through. But with Sonic's 30th anniversary, we finally got a brand new teaser which showed us nothing. We had to even wait even longer for the Game Awards where we finally see a good glimpse of the game. But between then, big leaks did occur for this game where it said that Sonic Team is trying a bit more of an open world approach. And once we get to the Game Awards, yeah, they just confirmed that they were doing an open world Sonic game. This made people excited and very cautious. It's been nearly 2 months since this game got released, so I thought why not and finally take the band-aid off and make a video on this game. But with everything out of the way, let's get started. So before the game got released, they released a few more prequel comics and a movie. I'll talk about the movie in a little bit, but for the prequel comics, so the comic starts off with Sonic and Tails meeting with Amy to search for the Chaos Emerald. However, Amy's been ambushed by Eggman. So after defeating all of his robots and such, Sonic confronts Eggman but realizes that he's not in the cockpit. Instead, it's a simple decoy that spits out famous quotes from Eggman. Tails realizes that they've been sidetracked so Eggman can reach Starfall Island first. Meanwhile, on Cronus Island, Eggman was able to land one of his ships where he talks to Orbot and Cubot. They warn Eggman that Sonic is up their tail, asking why haven't they warned them about the decoy. Worrying about that later, he prepares for his next device which will tell him about the agents. Although while he prepares, he laments on why doesn't his henchmen ever respect him or be successful. He wants to be filled with pride, not regrets, with Orbot and Cubot. Once he enters a mysterious gateway, he enters his device to the thing. Here, he was able to summon a bunch of robots and this giant one in the background. However, something happened which caused him to get sucked into the thing. Meanwhile, in the tornado, Sonic and Co. were able to get to the Starfall Islands. However, trouble occurs when a mysterious portal sucks everyone up. Sonic then lands into a twisted version of Green Hill. After going through an obstacle course, Sonic was able to escape easily. Once he gains conscience, he realizes that he is lost and separated from his friends. The only help he has is that this mysterious voice then talks to him, saying to find the Chaos Emeralds. Meanwhile, in the sky, this mysterious figure appears, watching Sonic over. And thus, it's up to Sonic to explore the Starfall Islands and figure out what's going on. So with the story in Sonic Frontiers, this has been one of the most talking points of the game. So ever since Sonic Colors, Sonic's story had a massive shift where instead of being a bit more story-based, it became more of a Saturday morning cartoon. That was also the game that introduced Sonic's brand new voice actor at the time, Roger Craig Smith. At first it threw me off, but as the years go by as we gain more Sonic games with Roger Craig Smith, it really grew on me. Now with this game in particular, we have once again a massive shift. So with Sonic Frontiers, Sega hired Ian Flynn to write the game. Because for years, Ian Flynn has been working with Sonic with the comic books since the early 2000s. So to see him writing a Sonic game was really exciting. So instead of the Saturday morning cartoon tone, the tone is once again a bit more serious, but also mysterious. So as Sonic runs around, he finds himself saving Amy from a cage, but she's still trapped in some sort of purgatory. So as Sonic runs around trying to figure out how to get Amy out of the situation, he finds himself with these mysterious creatures called Cocos, with Amy, despite being in a weird state, trying to help out these Cocos. As Sonic tries to zoom around the area, he eventually finds himself confronting a giant monster called the Titan, with this mysterious little girl warning Sonic to leave. Obviously, Sonic doesn't listen, and then he tries to attack the Titan, but gets his butt kicked. So yeah, this creature is going to need to go down with the Chaos Emeralds instead of just Sonic beating him up. Eventually, as he gathered all the Chaos Emeralds, he eventually finds Amy with the Cocos, but then suddenly this mysterious flashback appears, where it shows these two alien creatures coming together before they die. What? Eventually, Sonic was able to confront the Titan with the final Chaos Emeralds and completely obliterates it. However, despite this, Amy is still in her purgatory state, so Sonic assumes if he defeats all the Titans, he'll probably free everyone. And just like that, he then flies all the way to the next island, where he loses all the Chaos Emeralds. This is when Sonic discovers that Knuckles is on the island as well. So before this game release, Sega released an animated short about Knuckles. So in the short, Knuckles finds himself helping out some small chows, but after helping this chow get a mask, he eventually finds a mysterious gear in a small area he never seen before. Once he put the gear in the right spot, he eventually gets teleported on an island far away from his home. This is when a bunch of robots tries to ambush Knuckles, but he eventually kicks their asses with ease. And I've got to say, I really love the action sequence in this because it is really cool. However, this victory became short once the mysterious figure appears, where he traps Knuckles into this cage, same as Amy. Eventually, Sonic was able to free him, where he explains what's going on. Meanwhile, in cyberspace, Eggman is talking to the mysterious figure. This figure that's been confronting Sonic in the first area is called Sage. She was the mysterious device Eggman put into the portal that sucked him up into cyberspace. When Eggman tried to download stuff through the device, he converted it into a little girl. Although to Eggman, she's pretty much just another minion to him. Back into the real world, Knuckles finds himself helping a herd of Cocos try to defend their base. This is when Knuckles realized that the ruins in the area are the same as the Echidnas, which makes Knuckles even more curious about his past more than ever. This also really saddens him because he realized that he is the last one of his kind. But Sonic reassures him that despite him being the last Echidna, he still has friends. Knuckles then decides why not to leave the Angel Island for a bit to go out in the world. He knows that guarding the Master Emerald is a big responsibility, but so is going out and living. Out of all the character arcs, I honestly like this one the most because it's really endearing. For a while now, Knuckles has been a bit flanderized to be this meathead, but here they actually respect Knuckles and his past. A lot of characters grew a lot more in this game. It's really cool to see characters that we've known for years get fleshed out a lot more. So as Sonic gets all the Chaos Emeralds once again and to defeat the Titan, he finds himself on the third island, Chaos Island. He was eventually able to find Tails and then continue exploring the island. So in this game, they decide to talk about Tails' issues for the past few years. So, for a few years now, Tails has been considered the worst when it comes to the meta era, mostly because how much of a coward he became. With the worst being this infamous cutscene from Sonic Forces. This makes Tails question is that if he's a burden to Sonic. But Sonic reassures to him that he is not a burden, and in fact he is very strong. With this confident boost in mind, Tails decided to leave Sonic for a bit to try and grow a bit more. Because he can't rely on Sonic just to be strong. He needs to be strong by himself. And this is what I liked about the story about Sonic Frontiers. It both grows the characters and tries to mend the past. Sonic is not only helping them, but also helping them grow. They also have a lot of acknowledgement of past Sonic games, especially the early 3D ones, which is always cool. Some of the referencing can be a bit too much, like when Sonic tells Amy that he'll be faster than a fortune card reading. That one felt really forced. But when we're talking about stuff like referencing stuff like from Station Square, that one felt very good. Another thing that's great is that every character gets some screen time and learn to grow. Even Eggman. So for the first time since arguably Sonic Heroes, Eggman is not an antagonist at all. So throughout the game, he is trapped in cyberspace. Here, he eventually forms a bond with Sage, where when he started off as just a mook to him, ended up becoming a daughter to him. And this is just not for Eggman, but Sage also grows when he experiences Sonic helping his friends. Sage believes that they're most likely a goner just because of her numbers, but eventually she grew hope and such. So yeah, overall this game is really good in terms of story. Now, for the gameplay. So with Sonic Frontiers, they decided to change the gameplay entirely. They consider this the next evolution of the Sonic series. So instead of going for a linear hallway, we're going open world. So when this game first released, people compared this game to Breath of the Wild. And after playing it, I can say that there may be some elements of Breath of the Wild, but a lot of elements reminds me a lot of Mario Odyssey. So the main idea of the game is try to collect all the Chaos Emerald on the island. How you do that is pretty simple. There's two ways you get Chaos Emeralds. The first one is doing these simple mini games with the Cocos. But for the other Chaos Emeralds, you're going to need to get keys for them. How you get the keys are very simple. You need to complete Cyberspace, where you can find them in the open world. And then in order to do Cyberspace, you're going to need to get gears from these bosses. I'll talk about Cyberspace in a bit, but there's a lot of things you can do in the open world. You can do these simple puzzle minigames where you can unlock areas of the map, or you can get the abundance of memory tokens. Now for the memory tokens, these are collectibles that are everywhere in the map. You use these memory tokens as story progressions to make your friends more stable. However, for a certain amount of cutscenes, the ones that are optional, you're really going to need a lot of memory tokens. Because for a certain amount of cutscenes you need to do, you'll also be playing a small minigames with the Cocos. Now, exploring the various islands is honestly the best part of the game, because it really is really fun just to explore and run as fast as Sonic can. They pretty much turned Sonic into a more traditional 3D platformer. You can also collect these special seeds to power up Sonic even more, giving it this bit more of an RPG approach in a way. Beat that, Sonic Chronicles. Now, for the controls in this game, it is very different compared to any other Sonic game. When it comes to the boost era of Sonic games, they mostly control like a car where Sonic turns are pretty stiff, but it's mostly for top speed and such. Here, they kind of have a weird middle ground with modern and Dreamcast Sonic. You can even adjust how Sonic controls the options menu, which is always nice. But overall, Sonic control is great, honestly the best since probably the adventure games. If I have to complain one thing about this, is that when it comes to Sonic's jumping, it cuts all the speed, which can be very annoying. There's also some points where Sonic can just flings off. I kinda wish they do this more often, but it's pretty picky on when he can fling off and such. But when it comes to controlling Sonic, the best part of it is, weirdly, the rail grinding. I'm not kidding, the most fun part of controlling Sonic is when he goes onto a rail. Because when you boost on a rail in an incline and jump off, Sonic launches in the air like this. And stuff like this is really fun, and it's really fun to explore by just jumping off and flying where he can go. So yeah, Sonic's movement in this game is really good, but there's also a new thing for Sonic's gameplay, which is combat. For the first time since Sonic Unleashed, Sonic has a dedicated combat system. It starts off pretty simple, but you can do crazy stunts later on in the game. It's not as over the top or as fluid as other hack and slash games like Devil May Cry and such, but for this context and such, it serves its purpose. However, when we get to the other section, which is the cyberspace levels, these are a bit more hit or miss. So in every area of the island, there's portals where Sonic can go into cyberspace, where he goes to various levels in traditional Sonic fashion. These levels are pretty hit or miss. And what I said about how Sonic controls pretty well before, this doesn't apply to this, because Sonic's controls are very different in these areas for some reason. Sonic's control in the open world was pretty much a nice blend, but for the cyber levels, it leans more in the boost era, where Sonic controls very weirdly. And also, they are reusing a lot of levels from older Sonic games. In the first level, Sonic goes to Green Hill with the level design of the first level in Sonic Unleashed. And speaking of Green Hill, they only use 4 themes for every cyberspace level.
YouTube, the whole thing went live. You could see the whole thing now, but we're not doing that because we don't want to be spoiled. Oh, we're going somewhere. Is it Sky Sanctuary? I'm fucking done. I called it. I'm done. Are you kidding me? That is.
I'm
Guys,
so sick of this.
I am so sick of Green Hill, Chemical Plant, Sky Sanctuary.
Sega's obsession with generations will never end. It's pretty much like Nintendo and New Super Mario Bros. Listen, I really don't mind if Green Hill or Chemical Plant are in the game, but what I do mind is that they take up 50% when it comes to theming. with the other 25 being Sky Sanctuary, another oversaturated theme, and a new city level. Honestly, I feel like the only thing that carries these cyber levels are the mission structure. So in every cyberspace level, there are 4 missions you can do. The first one is just getting to the goal, while the second one is getting all the red star rings, third one is getting an S rank, and the last one getting a certain amount of rings. Now, just going through the stage is pretty boring, but doing it on a certain time limit and getting all the red rings kind of make these things a bit more fun in my opinion. Especially considering that you can get up to 7 keys during one level. Which is another thing I like about Sonic Frontiers, is that it lets you progress in your own pace. Like for example, if you're feeling a bit burnt out at the end, you can simply do big fishing minigames to get all the collectibles easily. So in the overworld you can collect these special coins that you can give to Big to do a special fishing minigame. I highly recommend saving up and do it at the last island because you can get a significant amount of tokens and such. With these tokens, you can trade in for Big for these various collectibles, plus these special Eggman memos where it tells about Eggman's story throughout cyberspace. I highly recommend reading it because it's really good. It shows Eggman's growth between him and Sage. However, this does contain one big issue, is that since the memos here contains all Eggman's development of a father and daughter relationship, since this is optional, a lot of people will most likely miss these special messages from Eggman. So when it comes to the climax and Eggman really cares about Sage, it comes out of left field for a lot of people, for those who haven't read them. Which is honestly a massive shame, because these messages Eggman leaves is really endearing, and it gives me a good chuckle a lot of times. Now, for the presentation of this game. So with this game, the art direction is very different from past Sonic games where it was a bit more cartoonish. For this game, it goes for a realistic approach. Now listen, I'm playing this on the Switch, so obviously the graphics here are really rough. But when we look at other versions, the game looks pretty good. On a technical level for the most part. Aesthetically, I don't feel like it's very memorable a lot of places. And when we get to cyber levels, while it's a bit more familiar and memorable, mostly because it's reusing levels we already know about, it's really mostly samey. And as for the cutscenes, well, these are a bit more mixed in my opinion. So when it comes to presentation in the Sonic game, I feel like most people agree that the weakest aspect a lot of times is probably the animation. In this game, it's a bit better compared to other Sonic games, but I kinda wish Sonic Team uses Sonic's eyebrows for expressions and not his eyelids, because when it comes to scenes like this, it looks a bit strange, but when it comes to stuff like this, it gives me a good chuckle because look at that smirk right there. And as for the tone for Sonic Frontiers, well, this is when things get very interesting. So when you start with the first area of the game, it has this really very somber tone to it. Like, the only other game I could think of that has this kind of tone was probably Mario Galaxy, where you're on the first planet. But when we get to other areas, it feels very epic and foreboding. Especially with the music, because holy crap, the soundtrack in this game is phenomenal. There's also a great amount of songs in this game. They have a song for every single boss fight. The soundtrack for the entire island changes depending on the progress of the game. And the cyberspace levels have this really funky jam to it, like it's a rave party. Although sometimes the soundtrack in cyber levels can be a bit samey in my opinion, but that's just a nitpick. But easily, the best soundtrack in this game are easily the Titan boss fights, because holy crap, this is another level. So for every end of the island, Sonic will be able to fight the Titan as Super Sonic, and this is when the music goes hard and the boss fight becomes extremely epic. My favorite theme is probably Undefeated because how amazing it sounds, just listen. Break Through It All really gives you the feeling that you're flying through the air, fighting this dragon thing. Find Your Flame gives me a good chill every time the opening hits. I was all floored with every single song in this game. It was that amazing. Especially what Sonic does in this boss fight. Like, in the first one, he's just beating this guy up and flying through him. The second one, he literally throws the Titan into a mountainside and tricks him into eating missiles. And in the third one, he's running the guy's shield and slicing him in half with his sword. Like, he just threw this giant sword in the air like it was nothing. That's fucking insane. Okay, so before I fanboy even more, I feel like it's time to finally wrap up this adventure. So as Sonic tries to free his friends from the cages, the energy that was made from the cage comes into Sonic for some reason. You really don't think too much of it because it gives Sonic new moves and such, but when we get to the third island, Sonic looks really worse. Especially when he tries to release Tails, as he looks like he's freaking dying. And throughout the cutscenes in the area, he looks very tired and exhausted. And after he defeats the Knight, he looks really worse. Like, he looks like he's about to collapse. This is when we get to the fourth section of the area, where these giant pillars appear. This is when the mysterious voice then tells Sonic to shut off the pillars, to hopefully save his friends. This is when we get significant story about the game. For one, the Chaos Emeralds aren't from Earth, as they are from space. Secondly, the ancients landed on Earth because something destroyed their own planet. And thirdly, once they settled into their new home, the thing that destroyed their own home followed them, and they tried to fight, but lost. And while this flashback is happening, Sonic looks worse and worse. Like, this honestly gave me chills when this cutscene arrived.
I believe I have come to understand you. Both of us will do anything to protect those who are precious to us. But your fate... it is what I calculated. Farewell, hero.
And once you finally got all 6 pillars closed, well... Island 4 was probably my favorite level, story-wise, but when it comes to gameplay-wise, well, this is when things fall flat. Despite the game telling that this is the 4th island, this is really just the 5th one, but on the topper level. And the only thing you can do in this area is just doing the 6 pillars, and after that, there's no other reason to go through the area. And as for the small pillars, well, these are pretty much small gauntlets and such, where you're going through 2D areas. And it's not really fun if you fall off because you have to do a lot of progress and such. It's fine and such, but there's a lot of missed potential in this area. Speaking of missed potential, that cutscene I just showed you kinda proves nothing because that whole thing resolved right after that one. It's like Sonic's friends come together to save Sonic and they just disappear, most likely in cyberspace. Now, after this game released, Sega did announce a season pass where everything is going to be free DLC and such, where the final DLC is going to be new playable characters and such. So I wonder if it's going to be about this section right here, because this just feels anticlimactic. But anyway, so as Sonic frees his friends and turned to a statue, the mysterious voice that's been guiding Sonic reveals that it was the true villain all along, and now it's going to destroy the world since it's been released. This made Sage plead to Eggman to help Sonic out save the world. He refused at first, but realized it's his only chance to live. It makes me wish why Sage was very vague on why she's doing this to everyone and such. Like, it's now understand why she wanted Sonic to avoid the Titans, because they were supposed to keep the thing at bay. But why until now to reveal everything once it's getting released? But anyway, so we're at the final island, and it's pretty much exactly like the other islands. Although I do feel like memory tokens in this area is a lot more scarce compared to the other ones. But anyway, so we collect all the 6 Chaos Emeralds, and Eggman comes with the last one.
You're not fast enough, so I found it for you. Go ahead and beat that giant! Don't you dare lose it!
Now why would I want to disappoint you?
So here we have is the final Titan, Supreme. This one is pretty alright. It's kind of easy considering how much level you're at this point. But I'm sure it's pretty easy because it's pretty much the first phase of the boss. So as the Titan goes down, the thing that was inside the Titan releases into space. This is when Sage realized that Sonic is going to need help defeating this thing. So he tells Eggman one final farewell.
I understand. Go. Fulfill your function.
Hurry, before it regains its full strength.
Ladies first.
Be careful, dear daughter.
This is when we get to the true final boss, which is only in hard mode for some reason, the end. And this is when things get very, very anticlimactic. So with the other Titan boss fights, it is over the top and pretty fun. Here it's pretty much a simple shooter minigame. And this, honestly, is pretty anticlimactic, especially considering how much it really builds up. Like, the first thing that Sonic says in the final boss really gives me chill. Just listen to this.
He took your home world. He took your lives. Are you going to let him do it all over again? I need your help. We can end this. Please.
Mortal, you have served your purpose. Now face your end.
Honestly, it's kind of a real shame that the true final boss of this game is just a simple minigame. I honestly did enjoy this little boss fight, but when the first boss fight was this, and we're with this, it does feel a bit anticlimactic. And honestly, the only thing that is truly carrying this boss fight for me is probably the dialogue for the end.
I saw your light. Your courage never wavered. Arrogance, ignorance, stupidity. I was contained once. Once. Is that why? My captain's best time in space.
Denied. You strike this incarnation with all your might. It changes nothing. You are not brave. You are not victorious. No matter what form I take.
But anyway, so as you go through this hell shooter, the end has enough and tries to do one final blast. Sonic was able to dodge it and do one final shot at the end. The entity then has one final trick up his sleeve, but Sage intervenes, saving Sonic, but dies in the blast. And with that, Sonic has saved his friends from cyberspace. However, for Eggman, he mourns the loss of his brand new daughter. In a surprisingly really sad and emotional scene right here. And that concludes Sonic Frontiers. And overall, despite having a lot of issues with stuff like Cyberspace and the ending, I honestly came really enjoying this game. The game's platforming and exploration gives me a feeling I haven't had since probably Mario Odyssey. And the story and writing in this game is phenomenal. It's honestly my favorite since Sonic Unleashed. This was Ian Flynn's first time ever writing a game for Sonic, and he knocked it right out of the park. The characters and writing in this game is great. They bring them back to the characters they were in Sonic Unleashed. Now, I didn't mind some stories like in Sonic Colors where it's very lighthearted. The issue was that the characters didn't really act themselves. And that's the main thing I feel like Sonic Frontiers tried to do, and did it really well, which is try to mend the past, while looking for a bright future. Now, despite this game being somewhat mixed for some people, this game was considered a commercial and critical success to Sega. Things are looking pretty promising for Sonic Team, as there's a lot of job openings coming up there, and they seem to be expanding Sonic Team as a studio. They know they have a good foundation here, and they're going to expand this even further. Or probably mess it up, who knows. So whatever Sonic game is happening next, I am very curious, because things are looking bright for Sonic these days. Now, since we're in the new year, I decided to why not try a little marathon like I did with the Pac-Man World games, this time where I'm going to be doing Donkey Kong. But that'll do for today, so thank you for watching and I'll see you later. Bye bye!